Hi guys, Mark Crossfield here, Golf Swing Weekly Fix Time with Golf WRX, talking classic slice issues. I see it day in, day out. I've recreated with my swing system, which is my body system, capturing all the many angles that I'm putting into my swing and certainly looking at wrist angles. So I've captured a classic poor wrist condition slicing swing that I see day in, day out. And it does hit target, like that one is hitting target. So let's show you how these players function when they use their wrists in a certain way, and maybe how other ideas with your wrist might help you hit the ball a bit stronger and hopefully a bit straighter. Let's get stuck in. So let's take a look at this data that I've captured from my swing, where I try to use my wrist in a way that I see students, golfers on the range and golfers playing day in, day out, using their wrist in these conditions. So what you can see from the start here is I'm setting up very much to the left. I'm 17 degrees open with my shoulders and I'm 7 degrees open with my hips. I'm trying to aim everything up the left, knowing that this ball is going to move to the right. It's a common thing that people who struggle with this kind of shape of shot do. Now, it's not a problem because remember, this shot hit target. It's just if you want to try and think about hitting the ball maybe in a different way, you might need to change these things, but we'll come back to that. Let's look at these wrist conditions. Left wrist, lead wrist, for me, started 29 degrees extended. So that's this way, cupped, if you like, at the beginning. Now, as I move the club back, what I would normally do in my swing is I would take any extension out. I would flatten my left wrist. I end up being maybe 14 extended at the top of my swing. On this occasion, I was 32 degrees extended with that lead wrist. So I actually raised the extension by 2 degrees. This is something I see day in, day out with students using their wrist in this way, where they're trying to cup it more on the way back. Often to do with the way they try to hinge their wrist. If I hinge my wrist, so people think they need to hinge their wrist up, I can't do that very well from a straight lead wrist, so a zero or even a flexion left wrist, I can hardly hinge at all. So if I put lots of cup in there, I can't hinge anymore, but I use actually a bit of pronation to turn that club up in the air. They think they're hinging. It's an interesting one. Now, as I start my downswing, and from all good players measured that I've measured on my system, as they start their downswings, their lead wrist, if it is extended at all, like mine is, it goes to zero or even into flexion as they pull down to hit the ball. But what I did on this swing is I tried to keep the extension in, which is again what I see students doing day in, day out. So I start pulling down and I start losing extension. You can see it coming down, but the lowest it gets to, around hands just above hip height here, is 10 degrees extended. My normal position here would be in flexion, so my wrist would be bowing back, not arching or cupping forwards. Now what happens is I'm going to have to move this path of this club way left, because there's a good chance this ball's going to go to the right, so I'm going to move my path and try and move this face left. When I measured on this swing, my path was 10 degrees to the left, so very out to in for me. And as I come down into impact, so as I came into hitting the ball here, you can see, if I just get an impact there, I'm 8 degrees extended, which for me is massive. I'm normally in flexion at this point. You can see there my shoulders and hips massively open, 49 degrees open with my hips and 40 degrees open with my shoulders. I'm spinning everything left, trying to get the face left, trying to get the path left of that face, to start the ball up the left and cut it back. All because of those wrist conditions. Now, another interesting number here, if I just find it on my shoulder to, or my kind of swaying forward, swaying back, if you like. Let me just find it here. So when I come in to hit this ball, I am 0.2 minus in pelvis sway. So I've had no effort to move my hips across towards the target. My normal swing, I would be 3 inches to the left. So I'd be moving my pressure up onto the left side, swaying my hips towards the target, laterally moving them on that downswing. On this swing, I'm actually 0 and trying to get away from the target. So in effect, I'm almost turning around my right foot Again, in that effort to open everything up, to get everything face and path pointing left because of those wrist conditions. So it's interesting, isn't it? It changes the way I turn my body, it changes the way I set up, all by having a hinged wrist at certain points, or a cupped wrist, extended, or if it's straight, or if in flexion, it's going to promote very different body moves. Let's give you an idea of how to kind of conquer some of these poor angles. So what happens with having this wrist extended, it makes me feel like the face is going to be pointing right of the path. So I do everything in my swing to turn left. You can see my hips and shoulders really opening up to try and get that face actually pointing left with this extended wrist, and then the path left of that, start the ball left and then move it back to the right towards the target. Now I struggle, I see a lot of students saying they video themselves and they see they turn on their back foot, so they're swinging around their back foot, they don't get off their right foot. Is that why they slice it? Well, that's why they're functional at times. So think about this, if I was to keep the extension in my wrist like I did on those swings there, aim straighter or even to the right to try and promote maybe a draw, but keep the extension in that wrist. What happens if I then make a downswing where I sway across in my normal swing? What happens is the ball just goes into the trees miles to the right. So for that twisting of their hips, the way they move their body, and often if you measure them on something like my body track, which is pushing, how they're pushing into the ground, that kind of pushing back on their back foot is there to make it functional. Now, if you want to improve your lateral movement on the way down, what you might feel as weight shift and get off the right foot, you've got to deal with these wrists. So normal grip, I did this all from a very neutral grip. What I want you to do on your backswing, actually what I want you to do to start is set up aiming slightly to the right. I do this with students lots. It throws them a bit. So I get them to aim down the right and say, now if you don't flatten this wrist off, backswing, and as soon as you pull down, this ball is going right. So I want you to set face to the right, feet to the right, and then do everything you can to flatten this wrist on the backswing and the downswing, even if it gets to a stage where you feel like you're doing what people are calling now a DJ, where you're trying to flex that wrist, so get it bowing back on the backswing. Everything you can to move that wrist back and down that way. What will happen is you'll start seeing very different shapes of shots. That ball's got 25 yards of draw. I had much more of an effort of moving onto my left side. I wanted to push that ball out, because I could feel my wrist was turning that face in a different relationship to the path. Got to think of wrist conditions. So many people go the other way around. Wrist conditions are going to influence face to path. You've got to start there and work backwards. There is a reason why you're doing these funky moves often for players, and the reason is that you want to find target, you want to have fun, you want to play golf. If you deal with the wrist conditions, you'll start hopefully making some better other moves, hitting a little further, maybe a little bit straighter. Post comments down below, let me know what you think, let me know if this makes sense. Again, a lot of data in this one, but what I love about this system is maybe rather than dealing in some kind of mythical tips, let's look at some measured data and all get better. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Periscope, all the normal social places. Also, come and visit my new website, markcrossfieldgolf.com. See you over there.